So you install Evoke from a link as an app on your computer, just the same as you've installed probably dozens of other apps, including Outlook, Word, Excel that you mentioned earlier. When you open Evoke, you'll get a screen that looks just like this after you've logged in. On the left-hand side is your navigation around the product, and in the middle here is your work area. And the first thing you need to do when you open up Evoke is decide what you want to work on. Now, as we described in the presentation, Evoke will allow you to create an app design using all sorts of drag and drop, point and click and option select methods that take your ideas and turn them into a design that you can then, with the click of a button, generate into a full and complete Visual Studio deployable app solution. So when you start, you can either create a new app design, which will be a template with all of the placeholders for menus, links to databases and connectivity to databases, screens, etc., all in place, ready for you to adjust how you want. Or you can open one of the existing app designs that you have on your Evoke account and evolve that. There are also a number of demonstration apps that we provide you the app design for and the ability to access online. These include things like an expenses and timesheets app that's used by people to create their expense forms or their timesheets and turn these into invoices, etc., and send them on to supervisors. A sales pipeline app. There's an example app. We provide you the design for that. That doesn't really do a lot other than give examples of lots of the different widgets and components that are pre-built into Evoke and that you can use with a single click. There's also a simple sales order processing app. This allows customers to review the products of a company, to place an order, and for that company to fulfill that order. Now, we're going to use that app design for this demonstration today, mainly because it uses a multi-value database, which is one of the things that I understand you also use and want to use Evoke with. So now that I've got the app design, I need to select which version of the app design I want to access. Now, you can keep as many versions of an app design as you want. Most of our customers keep a live, a test, and an in development version, but you could keep a Wednesday version if you want, just because today's Wednesday. It's entirely up to you. We're going to look at the current live version of this. What Evoke's doing now is it's pulling down the latest design of that version of that app design. Now, if you recall in the presentation, I said that Evoke will deliver direct to your computer 100% of the source code of your generated app design. And that's absolutely true. But if that's true, why has it just pulled down a design from a central secure Azure account that is only for you? And the answer to that is that organizations sometimes want more than one person to work on an app design at a time. And Evoke allows you to do that. So the design is held centrally, work items are created, same as with any source code control system. And individual users of Evoke are able to work on the same design, make changes in an autonomous way, and then submit them when they're finished their testing to the team leader, who can, with the click of a button, merge their changes into a base version of the app design. But more on that later. So Evoke has taken us into the style area of your app design. And I always find it useful at this point to put into context what we are looking at here. And because these are deployed apps, I'm able to take you to the completed app for this app design. Here I've got a standard login screen that allows me to authenticate a user and to log into the app. I've got the menu on the left because that's where I asked it to be.
Hey, Simon.
Yes,
what kind of authentication will that support?
Okay, so as standard, there's quite a long list, but I would
Well, does
imagine
it
you're
do it?
probably looking for Azure Active Directory or something like that.
Yes, Active Directory.
Okay, so one of the options that we have is Azure Active Directory, but more than that, you can also ask for single sign-on. So just like some of the apps on your existing computer, if you have logged into Active Directory and then go into this into an app that has Azure Active Directory, it will skip through the login screen and log you straight in using your Azure Active Directory credentials. But if you don't want to do that, you can actually have someone go through and log in again. You can also add as you probably know, with Azure or Windows AD, two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Okay, great. So the menu's on the left-hand side because we asked for it to be there. It's also a tiled menu because we said that's what we'd like our users to see at the beginning. I could have equally made it a normal menu or even a minimal menu, or as is more common on tablets and mobile phones, or in fact any mobile device, we could have made it the traditional burger style menu that people click and bring in. In this case, we made it a tiled menu. Now, the demonstration app here is very simple, but what it's done is it's given us a little bit of personalization with Hi James, because that's who's logged in. It's given me the current date, and it is waiting for me to put some data in here. I'll type the letters CAR, and that's given me a list of customers beginning with CAR. Now, once I've done that, whenever I select one, it will give me some further details down here of customer orders, orders by value, and a few contacts. I've got a menu on the right-hand side that gives me a few other things, but effectively, as you've probably figured out, you're looking at a bit of a glorified website when you see this. So what I'm going to try and do, if the technology will allow me to, is I'm going to try to bring this same app up on a couple of mobile devices and use the Reflector 3 screen mirroring software to show you the screens. So it's brought up the phone. It hasn't quite brought up the tablet yet, but I should be able to log in on the phone, and I should also be able to now bring up the tablet, which it's letting me do. And it's brought up the tablet. So there we go. So if we log in on these devices, we can then put exactly the same information into these as we did Reflector software is being slow now. Seems to be a common theme. So we'll put CAR into both of these, and you'll see that it's quite happily brought up the same screens that you saw on the computer. However, if you look closely, they're not quite the same screens. We'll make this one a little bit bigger for you. Oh, made it go away. We'll make this one a little bit bigger for you. There's not enough room on these screens. That one really doesn't like to stay, does it? To show the three boxes at the bottom. So as you can see on the tablet, these have been tabbed together so that you can see them by clicking on the individual tabs. There's still the menu on the right hand side, so you can go off and do some additional things. And on the phone, there really is not enough real estate to put any of these boxes. So what Evoke's done is it's given you the standard menu, but as you can see from this little greater than sign, it's also given you an additional menu that allows you to go off to new screens to see the information held in these little boxes at the bottom, or the tabs on the tablet. There's a few other things that have changed as well. First of all, the menus have defaulted to mobile style burger menus. And you'll notice that the styles and themes have changed slightly. We can now see that we have rounded boxes and we have different style input boxes. And the reason for this is I mentioned in the presentation that there are different cultures on iOS devices, on Android devices, and on Windows devices. It's their own styles. And these cultures, people get used to. And Evoke can either ensure that these styles are mimicked for your users, or as some of our customers do, you may say, I have a corporate style. I don't care what Apple, Microsoft, Google do. I want my app to look the same no matter who looks at it on whatever computer or mobile device. And Evoke can provide that for you as well, so they all look the same. Okay, well, I'm going to move these out the way for now because we've had a quick look at those, and I just wanted to put into context what it was we were looking at. Now, in this area of Evoke, this is where you set up the styles, themes, and culture of your app. There's a lot of settings, and as you go through these, you can set up, for example, different color palettes that you might want to set up. You can say what default colors, styles, themes, and even fonts you want to use in your app. Now, all of these settings can be overridden as you go through and evolve your app design, but it gives you a starting point, a place that means that when you add a data grid, for example, or an input box, it knows the style and theme that you want, and you're able to do that. It's able to do that for you, and then you can change it. Here's where we set up the menu and the styles that people want. Now, you're probably noticing already that there are lots of settings within Evoke. And that's because the concept of the product is it should allow you to do whatever you want to do. We've already talked about multi-value databases and how important it is that you shouldn't need to change your database in any way whatsoever. And it's the same with the culture and style of your company. You want an app that reflects what you want. So there's lots of settings. If you hover over any of the boxes within Evoke, there will be a tooltip that comes up that explains to you what that box is. But your best friend when using Evoke are going to be these two buttons up here. The first one is the context sensitive help. Wherever you are, anywhere in Evoke, if you click this button, it will take you to a help screen that shows you exactly where you are in Evoke, what you are doing, and gives you far too much information about what you're looking at and how to work with it. And that's intentional. We don't expect you to read this help guide word by word. We expect it to be your friend that you can go to at any time that will actually help guide you through. Now, if we go back into Evoke, you can also go to the full user guide. This gives you help in lots of different ways, depending on which way you like to develop products. First of all, it will explain all the different areas of Evoke in a lot of detail, and you can go through the links and see information on that. It has a full A to Z guide, and you can even look by the different menu options in Evoke. We're in app at present, and it will give you links to all the different information within that. Okay, we'll come back to this a little later. As long as I can minimize it, there we go. We're back in Evoke. So once you've set up your theme, you can save that for use with this app or other app designs in the future. But we do also know that when you start using Evoke, you just want to dive in and create yourself an app. So what we'll do is provide you with your account a whole set of standard themes with colors that all blend together. So things like blue, soft blue, black, green and gray, gold, etc., etc. Lots of preset themes that you might find useful. There's also in addition to the security of logging in, there are lots of ways that you can identify your users into different groups or different levels of security. In fact, if you wanted to, you could make every individual user have a unique navigation path through your app and have different levels of security. More often than not, our customers put their users into groups or have existing security properties within their user records on their database. And you can use all of these methods in order to create the navigation route and security through your app. One of these is the groups. And here we've created some simple groups just to demonstrate this. There's customers, managers, a sales team, suppliers, accounts, etc. Now you can put your users into one or multiple of these groups, or as I said, you can use existing data within your database in order to create the same functionality. In this case, depending on which group a user is in, it will depend on where they start in the app. You noticed when I brought up the app earlier, it took us into this menu and customers, and we were able to look around. If I had logged in as a different user, so for example, if I log in as customer, it will take us into a different menu and a different start screen in order to utilize the app. Okay, so now we've done that, we have a number of other things here that we go through in a lot of detail during the training, and I don't need to cover in the demo other than to say that once you have created your app design, you can set it so that any of your users, depending on the culture set in their user record, can see everything within their app, from the prompts to the headers, to the tabs, the menu, in any of 180 different languages. The only thing that will not ever be translated is the data that is being pulled from the database. That is always displayed as it is received from the database. Other than that, everything else can be translated. The next thing is, how do you hook this app design? And once you've changed all of this, you can save these themes for use later on. So how do you hook this app design up to a database? Well, Evoke will guide you through everything with wizards. In this case, in this demonstration app, we've hooked up to a multi-value database and a SQL database. But as I said in the presentation, there's no limit to how many databases you actually hook up to your app. You could have a JBase database for your customer file, a universe database for your products file, a D3 database for your supplier file, and a SQL Server database for your orders, and that would all be fine. Evoke will, when you add one of these, simply ask you to define what type of database technology it is, what flavor it is, and similarly for SQL, it will ask you a series of similar questions, and then it will guide you through the connection for SQL and for multi-value. Now, if you're users of MV.NET, which I understand you are, it's even simpler. You are able to, with Universe, use the Unidata connectivity tools. But with MV.NET, it's just so much easier, because all that you need to do is to set up that you're using MV.NET and put in your login profile. And at that point, you are able to use some of the utilities to test the connection to the database. Once you've got that, you can review all of the different repository objects that you have in that database that you have made visible to the app. Again, if you're MV.NET users, you probably know how to set files into the visible files list to make them visible to the app or not. Now, these are the physical files in your database. And obviously, we're going to need to hook up to these. But within the UI of your app, wherever it is, on a phone, a tablet, a desktop computer, a laptop, there will need to be some corresponding data structures. These data structures in Evoke are called entities. And here you'll see a number of entities in this demonstration app. Evoke will create for you automatically a few of these for convenience. A simple user file, a classification file, a user group file, etc. And then you'll want to bring in structures for some of your other database objects. Here is a product structure, and we've got various properties in here for the product. Now, you don't need to retype all of these. Back in repositories, you're able to say, actually, this is my product entity, and I want to import from the database. Now, here you'll see there's actually only slightly more attributes and properties than in my entity, but there can be hundreds of attributes and entities in a multi-value object that you have, and you don't need to bring them all in. You don't need to use them all in the UI of your app. You'll only select the ones that you want to use. You'll still be able to read records and write records and create records, but it will only update the fields that you define here. So you're able to very simply create things like the data structure of the UI as your entities that will be used within your app. Each of these has a data types that you will be familiar with. And during the training, we will show you how these relate to multi-valued associated groups, multi-values, sub-values, etc., etc. Go back to the user. Now, whilst it's fairly obvious that I would have a first name and a last name in my database, and these two properties will link to those attributes or columns in your database object, there will also be times that you want to use calculated fields. So things like full name doesn't exist in the database. In a multi-value database, you would create this as a special field, but it would be a virtual field. In Evoke, you can take the properties of the database and you can do anything that you want with a multi-value database right here in the app, in the UI of the app. In this case, it's obviously very, very simple and no prizes for guessing that we simply take the first name, the last name, and concatenate them. And we put a space as the separator. We could change the case, we could trim it, but in this case, it's very simple. But that's only one of multiple different calculated properties that Evoke provides for you that allow you to perform all the functions that you're used to, whether they be arithmetic functions, whether they be string expressions for special keys that you might have as compound keys, or even conversions that can take, for example, a date, a time, and convert it into whatever you want. Or you can extract parts of an existing property to use those, etc., etc. The training and the help provide a lot more detail on these. But calculated properties are the first way that Evoke allows our users to create apps using Evoke without any customization whatsoever, except for possibly the occasional call to an existing subroutine that you want to reuse within your database. So we've got the data structures of the UI, and we've got the physical database objects that we've just looked at here. There's one further step, which is that you have to tie the entity, the data structure of the UI, to the physical object, and that's the mappings. Now, if you've imported your data structures, This will all be done automatically for you, and you'll simply be able to go in here and review it. So for example, in the app user, you can see I have a number of different properties in different attribute positions. I have got a copy of MV.NET open if you want to review any of the physical data that we're linking to here. And as you can see, we've got a bunch of data with login names, passwords, security groups, etc. in the database. And here we've got the corresponding ones with attribute positions. Now, what we also find is that some of the data types, like Boolean, people have historically in their database Booleans that are either ones and zeros, Ys and Ns, or Y and anything else, plus anything else you might think of. So with Evoke, you can override standard conversions and set what you want the true or the false value to be of your Booleans. And you can do this by individual Boolean if you want. Let's talk about related data. So Evoke allows you to link any object to any other object in exactly the same way as you no doubt will have been doing for many, many years. You can hold local keys, means the key to another record is held in this file, and remote keys, the key to this record is held in another object. And they're no problem. You just select them here, and you say which attribute it is, and Evoke does the rest. But you can also have embedded multi-values associated groups, embedded sub-values, etc., local sub-values. And Evoke will work all of this out for you, allowing you to simply set it up with an attribute position here so that you can actually retrieve those linked records, use them, write them back, etc., making it very easy. So you've got your database repositories or objects, your entities, which are the data structures of the UI, and your data mappings, which link everything together and allow you to create the linkage for different objects. Once you've got those set up, you're pretty much there. You can dive into creating your app. Let's just mention one further thing on the data structures of the UI. One of the things that you will definitely want to do within your app is create drop lists. And Evoke supports multiple types of drop lists. This is a very good example of a static drop list. It always shows the same information and you pick one of the things from this. In Evoke, we call these classifications. We provide a classifications file for you for simplicity and convenience. And you can create classifications that will be used. These classifications can pick up data from the classifications file on any individual deployment of the app in order to use. Or alternatively, you can use the design time data to burn in fixed classifications if you always want them to be static. Evoke also supports dynamic classifications, meaning that the drop list will be created dynamically from different data located somewhere or around your database, so that you will have a variable length drop list with data directly from your database. Okay, let's get into working on our app. So every app needs a menu. In Evoke, you have a very simple, easy to use menu structure creator. Here you'll see that I've got about a dozen different menu items, and then one parent menu item and two children menu items. If we go back, you'll see these are the main menu items. Here's the parent one and the two children. However, there's only 5 here, yet in my menu creator, I've got about a dozen. So why the disparity? Well, you only want to show menu items that a user has the security level to see. You can show them and disable them if you want to tease a customer as to what might be available to them if they were to say, I don't know, pay some money. But you can also hide them depending on what you're doing. And the way you do that within Evoke is this access control. So once you've set up your menus and whatever you're doing within Evoke, if I blank some of these out and show you, I might create a caption called customers. If I then click into name, it'll provide that down there for you. And you'll find that that sort of ease of use is available throughout Evoke. And then you have access control. Now, access control allows you to determine if this menu item or any other component, widget, segment, or attribute within Evoke is visible, not visible, enabled, or disabled. And you can do this by data or by user group. So here you can see I've made this not visible if the user that has logged in has any of these user groups that we reviewed earlier within their account. If, however, you were doing it on a piece of data within your database, then you would use the data-based access control. Now, you'd simply need to put in the entire path to your piece of data. And there's absolutely no way I can demonstrate that to you because I wouldn't have a clue. But with Evoke, you don't need to. Everywhere you need to fill in a data path or anything to a specific piece of your data, Evoke will provide you with a builder. So linked from, in this case, the user, there is a link to the company. Now, it might be a local key. And so we can say we can move from the user down to the company record in the company object, company item, company object. And in that company item, we might find the main contact, a link to the main contact. Now, that might be a remote key. There might be a remote key in the main contact record, in the main contact object, that links back to this company record. So we can go down through that. And then within there, we could carry on. But I think what we'll say is, OK, we'll pick out the first name. But you can pick out any individual attribute that you want. And when I return, it's provided the specific path that Evoke will be able to use. And then we can say, well, it might equal, it might be not equal to, it might contain, and we can provide one of the system test values. Or in this case, I might say, well, if it's Simon, then you can do absolutely everything. But I am biased to Simon's. So Evoke will allow you and help you build all of that. I'm going to take that away and I'm going to cancel these changes. And because when we were in this menu, I made a change to customers to show you how that worked. You may have noticed that Evoke put a cancel button, top right, a confirm and save button on the left, and put a pen mark to say you'd made a change and you haven't dealt with it yet. I'm going to cancel this change because I don't want it at this time. You can go down to whatever depth of menu you want. So you could have parents with children that are parents with further children, that are parents with further children, etc., etc., etc. It's very easy to move your menu around, and it's very easy to change your settings. Now, each main menu item will be linked to what's called a page series. That's a logical area of your app. So again, if we go back to the app design, we'll see that we have a number of different logical areas, each that will provide different functionality. So each of these is linked to what's called a page series. And the page series in Evoke are the logical areas of your app. So here we have the page series, and we can view this in the same way as you can most other things within Evoke as a different structure. And this shows the menu structure that we were just looking at and which page series each one is linked to. Now, a page series in Evoke is a logical area, looking at customers, in the demonstration app. And you can have one or more screens within a page series. We refer to these as pages. So here you can see I've got quite a few screens in this one. One of these screens will be designated as the main screen. If we go back to our demonstration app that we were looking at, and we log in as demo again, we can see the screen that we were able to put some values into, and we saw that they populated. Within Evoke, we can now look at this screen. But before I go there, I just want to refer to one further data area. We looked at the repositories, the databases that hold the objects. We looked at importing the data structures of some of those objects, some or all of them, some or all of a structure. You can bring in partial records. In fact, most of our customers do, and how those can create the data structures of the UI. We looked at how those data structures map back to the attributes within the objects, and how this is all done automatically if you import your objects. Now, when you are using data within Evoke, you may run a selection against your database and bring that data back. And that data will then be within the UI of maybe your mobile phone or your tablet or your desktop computer or your laptop. You can create new items. You can update items and write them back. And those data areas within the UI of the app are referred to in Evoke as data sources. And here you can see we've set up 3 data sources. All we needed to do was to give these a name and a structure. So we picked an entity type that we had created, being the data structure of the UI. There are no naming conventions within Evoke. You are able to name things however your company normally names things and uses naming conventions. We're not going to push you through requiring that. You then, for each of these data sources or data areas, define, will it hold one record or more than one record, i.e., is it a collection or not? Do you want it to participate in the autosave option that Evoke can give you or not? Now, the autosave option is when you make a change, and any change that you make will, as you saw just now, and I'll add an S here, give you a confirm or a cancel option. And Evoke can automatically do that whenever your users change any piece of data within your app, within this data source, if that's what you want. The reason it's optional, I'm going to cancel this change, so I don't want to make that. The reason it's optional is because there are times when you may be creating an overlay page, or you may be performing a number of functions that you want to be complete, or you want to roll something forward or roll something back if the user decides to save or cancel something, in which case you can use buttons or headers or actions to perform that. And you can also, if you have large files that you can imagine, if you were picking out 10,000 products and wanting to display all of them to your user in their mobile phone, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing, but you could, then we can provide data paging for you at the UI level, at the database level, or we can simply have all of the data retrieved at once and displayed at once. And you can do this on different devices. Desktop or mobile platforms can have different settings with different paging. Okay, so we've got our root data sources. And again, as I mentioned earlier, at any time you can hit the context sensitive help, and this will provide you with information at a high level and at a detailed level about what you need to do on the page you're on. Now, in addition to the root data sources, you'll notice that below I have something called refined data sources. So what are these? Well, my refined data sources are simply mirrors. So if I want to add a refined data source, I can say, okay, I'll give it a name, whatever name I want again, no naming conventions. And then I simply pick from my root data sources drop list which one I want to mirror. In this case, I'm mirroring customers. But if it's just a mirror that's automatically managed by Evoke, what's the point of it? Well, when you're designing your screens, you can use these mirrors, and it's easier if I show you what they can do. In this case, I'll go to one of my other demonstration apps. I'm now in my pipeline app. It's a sales pipeline app. Here it's recording all the different sales prospects that we have, and I can hear Bob giving a sigh of relief that we brought up the demonstration one rather than the one that he uses. And here, although it's demonstration, you can see that the sales team have been very prolific in bringing a lot of prospects. But I've linked this to a refined data source. Now, regardless of the data source, I'm able to, as a user of this app on any device, make any of the columns bigger or smaller if I want to see it in a different way. That's standard. But because it's a refined data source, I'm also able to sort all of this data that I brought back, a subset of data from a selection, in this case, alphabetically, or maybe we'll sort it by reverse value. But that still doesn't let me find the ones I was going to show you. So I can also search as a user of this app. And I remember that the ones I wanted to show you had TE in them. So this has refined it now to 5 different products, but I still can't find it. I know it was one of Bob's ones, so I can further refine this. And yes, now I found the one that I want. So a refined data source allows your users to perform all of these functions without you having to do any work in Evoke. Whilst we're here, I'll quickly show you the example app. As I said, all this does is provide examples of things like some of the different widgets that you can actually add in Evoke with drop lists or radio buttons, and the different tables that you can do and how you can include calculators into data grids and different images, the different selections that you can perform, and what you can do with images. You can upload all sorts of images and do whatever you want with them, even within the app. There are file uploaders, file downloaders, signatures. In fact, there's far too much for me to show you here, such as the graphs. And in the presentation, I mentioned the 4 graphs that are set up very easily within Evoke from components, and even show you that this graph has been set up from this data retrieved from the database. And because it's live data, if I change, for example, the status, because this is sales by status of this one, to demo arranged, it will in real time adjust my graph, and all the graphs work the same way. There are chatbots, there's embedded videos that I mentioned. In fact, there are many, many different things, including shopping, which a lot of people want to use, that includes not only a browse by card view and a shopping cart, but also 360-degree virtual tours. So here I am in a shopping center, and I can decide where I want to go. And of course, I'm going to want to go into the Rolex store. So now I'm in the store. I can have a little look around the store, and I'm quite interested in what this is. Oh, it's ladies' watches. No, I don't want a ladies' watch. So I'm going to have a look here, and this is classic and timeless Rolex watches, elegant to wear and an investment to be proud of. Happy days. I definitely want to look into this case. So I've zoomed in, but I want to actually go into the case to see if I can get a better look. I can find these and go, oh, well, that's quite nice. Let's see what we've got here. Got a Rolex here. It's got a description. It's 220 pounds. Oh, I like that. I'm going to add it to my cart straight away. It's been added to the cart, and now I can return and I can complete my shopping cart. So you can walk around and zoom in. You can even link directly to websites and what have you. And there are more demonstrations of this on our website. And then I can also, in this case, leave the store and decide where I want to go next. I mentioned in the presentation a long time ago now that Evoke is incredibly powerful to be able to change your culture, your currency. Here, everything is US, but you may have some users that that prefer Spanish. So, of course, everything is translated, including the day to Spanish, and everything in this case is converted to euros, and the date format is changed as well. Because it's so powerful, one word of warning is, in addition to here's pinning and unpinning, you can allow your users to do things like this, to pin things and unpin them. You can over complicate an app and make it not look quite as good as you might want it to. So, but if you're careful and can use Evoke to change things, you can set the buy price more than the sales price and make everything go red, so it's highlighted for you. I'm going to, yes, so I've made everything go red. If you ask Bob nicely, he'll give you access to this app. Okay, let's go back and look at Evoke again. And what we want to do now is to look at screens and how we build our screens. So I'm going to go into that main screen, and my screen is going to change quite dramatically. What I'll have in the middle here is a representation of the screen that I am building. Now, it's going to take up as much room as is available. If I get rid of the menu, for example, it'll take up even more room. So it will take up whatever room is available, and it's a representation of your screen. Over here are all the different ways that I can adjust this. Now, when you build a screen or adjust a screen within Evoke, everything on a screen is set up as a segment. Here, I put a border around this segment so that you can see the segment clearly. Now, segments can have anything you want in them. They can have widgets, they can have components, they can have text, they can have buttons, they can have data grids, they can have data entry, they can have single data fields, they can have records, they can have graphs, etc., etc., and the list is almost infinite. But if I change the view, how I'm looking at this, I've got various development modes and a bordered mode. You can actually see that the segment I was showing you is a parent segment, and in it are 6 further segments. This has got a data entry. This has got a bit of static text. There's a button here. There's actually an image, a data-bound image pulled from the database of the user that has logged in here. We can go back and we can look at these. Now you can embed segments inside segments inside segments inside segments to an infinite level. And this means that if you really wanted to, you could design down to a single pixel. Not sure we recommend it, but you can. You can have segments that are data grids, segments that are graphs, segments that are individual records. And the way you adjust those is simply by using these options here. And there's pretty much everything you might want to do. You can change the level from a parent to a child, or you can add a parent level. You can insert segments, remove segments, and down there are wizards that will guide you through until you are confident to configure segments yourself. And down here are 2 very complexly worded options: mark current segment to be used as a clone, and set current segment as clone of marked segment. Or, as we like to say, copy and paste. In addition, each segment can have a header. In this case, we've configured this to have the selected customers header. We've given it some header text. It got its header simply by ticking this box. And then we were able to put some text in. We were also able to define a small menu on the end, which has a lot of system options, new, delete, show, etc., or can have custom implemented options, which we'll come to in a moment. You can override for this segment any of the settings you set up in the theme of your app right at the beginning of this demonstration. Here we can override the sizing, and in this one we can override the colors. So if you can see here, the color background here is picked from my color palettes, and it's a deep purple. Now, if you really want to, you can actually even override things down at the different operating system level. But again, it's a bit like designing down to a single pixel. It's not something we recommend, but there are some of our customers that do really want to do that. I didn't show you actually that in the beginning, when you are doing the styling, if you want to have your app look exactly the same on every device that it's running on, simply tick these two boxes, and that's exactly what will happen. It will override it to always look the same. So back to our screen here, we can override our colors. We can also add navigation onto the end of this grid. And you saw in here that I had a small menu with my new purchase order, amend customer, and full details here. So on navigation, I've got new purchase order, amend customer, and full details. Now for each of these, you can specify them to be a delete, remove, or to use Evoke's click actions. Now Evoke's click actions are our own component library. They're very extensive and allow you to once again perform any of the functions that you're used to with a multi-value or SQL database. So let's have a look at the click actions that are set up for when someone clicks on one of these menu items. And as I said, there are a lot. Please don't be put off by them. There is full help and training available for these, but they allow you to do whatever you want to do. So for example, when I create a new order, in this case, I'm setting the row that they've clicked on the menu as the current row. Now, I don't actually need to do that because I can tick this box down here, but for the purposes of a demonstration, I wanted to show all the different options that we had. Then I go out and I want to retrieve some additional information associated with the item that is being displayed. In this case, it's an individual customer record. And I'll go and get the main customer, main contact, and who it's assigned to records from other objects to have them available now in the UI. The reason we're doing this at this level is we don't want to click on we don't want to try to retrieve all of the data at the beginning and send it all across the internet. We're doing it efficiently here. We're assigning different values and we're navigating on. Well, these are just some of the click actions. If we have a look here, there are a lot of click actions. Evoke has many optional components. Integration of UPS's WorldShip, for example, is one of our optional integrations that you can just turn on. But here you can see you can manipulate and assign different values. You can call directly out to a data basic subroutine or a system builder subroutine. You can also perform custom code through code hooks in the UI. You can do conditional click actions, if then else, else if, etc. Launch dialer apps, email apps within Evoke. Navigate either down, sideways, up, wherever you might want to go. Read using key. What most people use is a run selection and a retrieve related data. These are the two most common ones. And you'll learn these as you go along. You just need to know the common ones, and training provides you all the basics. But you can go through and there's a lot of options allowing you to do whatever you might want to do. You can also go through and take control of the adaptations. Here you can see that we've got 3 boxes, as you saw on the desktop, but we've set up some forced adaptations, meaning that we want to take control of how the screen real estate is used when it goes down to a tablet or a mobile phone. In this case, we've said merge to tabs or hide the segment. Again, there are lots of options, giving you options to do whatever you might want to do. And the training will provide you information for that. Okay, finally, I want to tell you a little bit about how you configure each segment. Now, again, it looks like there's a lot of options, but remember, Evoke will guide you through whenever you set one of these up, and the training will provide you with the basics. All I really need to do when I've created this segment is say, is it going to hold a data grid, multiple records, or is it going to hold a singular record? So I've set those 2 up in there. Yes, there are more options. It can hold images, it can hold 360-degree images, video players, etc., etc. But in this case, I've just said it's either a data grid or a single entity. I then need to say, where is the data coming from? Here is my data source that is bound to this segment. It's the customer's one that we looked at in our data sources earlier, but I didn't have to remember that. If you use the builder, you can pick whichever data source you want. So Evoke will take you through the steps. And the third piece of information, and that's all you actually need if you want to keep it limited, is the template. How am I going to structure this information? If I go to this template, what it's doing is it's saying it's a customer list. I've given it a name rather. I've given it a shape, data structure, the UI, and I have picked 3 of the multiple different properties. Now I can add them individually. I can add them by ticking them. So if I did add multiple, I can just decide which ones I want. I can set them all to be label or display boxes, because each of these gets an editor type. And the editor type can be one of many different things. In this case, it can be a non-editable display of a single line of text data. Now, Evoke will also limit the list of what is available to you by what is available on different devices and what is logically available. So if I go and look at a different template, then I'm able to see that I have a much longer list, allowing me to select buttons, checkboxes, date pickers, file uploaders, file downloaders, image uploaders, video uploaders, lookup buttons, drop down lists, drop lists, radio buttons, and the different selections that I might want to do. I've got text boxes, text areas, barcode scanners, QR scanners, etc. Again, it looks like a lot of information. The training guides you through, and Evoke has wizards. So let's have a look at what we're actually doing here, knowing that we only need to set a content type, a template, and a data source. Well, the first box that we can enter information into is bound on to a customer's data source. So that's where it's going to put data. And it's set up as a select auto that has been further configured to say, okay, when 3 characters have been typed in, run this selection against my database. And the data that comes back needs to be put in the customer's data source. Let's have a quick look at that. So here, I take this out and I start to type GA. When I get to the 3rd character, it'll run the selection, bring back the data, and display it for me. Now, how did Evoke know what to run? Well, in the data mappings for the customers, what you're able to do is to put in the data basic selection that you type into your database. It's really as simple as that. And of course, Evoke has builders for you that allow you to pick out your repository fields, your filter selection, if you pass parameters in, etc., and use those. So you've created an app that's linked to your database that gives you data structures of the UI, or app design, give you data structures of the UI that links back to the different attributes within your database, that then has a menu structure and individual pages. But how does Evoke know how to talk to your database and how to maintain data integrity? Well, with SQL, it uses ADO.NET, but with multi-value, it's slightly different. We need basic code to create, read, update, and delete anything within our database. And if you tick this item, then Evoke will create in your database in a file called create evokecrud.bp a whole series of data basic. In this case, we can look at the user file. Actually, let's look at the customer file. What was that called? Organization. And in here, you'll see that Evoke has created all of this. The item was created, and it provides all of the create, read, update, delete, read multiple, select, and the different selections that you set up within Evoke. All you need to do is to compile and catalog this, and Evoke will use this to interface with your database. But sometimes you don't just want to call routines from within your app. You might want to take over this code and put your own personalization and customization into it. It's quite normal with data basic. And so you'll notice that the very first thing it does is it calls a custom version of this. Now, the base version is created by Evoke and is owned by Evoke. But the customization file is created by Evoke and then owned by you afterwards. And it has placeholders, or in this case, code hooks for create, read, update, delete, and selections that allow you to add whatever basic code you want in order to run at those positions. So you can take total control if that's what you want to do. Okay, let's go back and look at our page. So the last thing I want to show you is how we make a change. So we've got our contacts box down here, and our contacts box has got a header with contacts. So I'm going to change this to be contacts Amico. And you'll notice that I have my commit and my cancel. And in this case, I'm going to commit that change. And now all I need to do, it's changed in the UI of the app, is go to the generator. And in the generator, I've already set up where on my computer I want 100% of the source code to be placed after it's generated by Evoke. I've said what version it's going to be. So all I need to do is hit the big green button. What Evoke will do now is it'll run around the app design, validating and verifying and making sure that it's perfect. And as long as it is, it will finish. Otherwise, it will create some warnings and some errors. Now, warnings can be ignored. However, there is, again, full help on all the warnings. Now, if I go into Visual Studio, it's asking me to reload that app design because I already had it open. I've got over here all of the different files that have been created by Evoke to make a full and complete app design. And so if I go back to my app here, all I need to do is a Control F5. And what I'm going to do simultaneously is try to get into my app on my tablet as well. And hopefully it will come up. Come on, tablet. You can do it. Right, so it says that it's brought it up. There you go. And I've now got both my computer and my tablet. So I'm going to log in on both of these. And once I'm in on both of them, tablet hasn't come up. I'm going to put the same CAR in again on both of them. And it's brought both of them up, and now we can actually see that it's already updated the UI to show Contacts Amico as a deployed app. And it really is that simple to evolve your apps using Evoke. Now, there's a lot to learn. That's why we provide you with training and such extensive help. But what's really important is I've just shown you the Evoke app at a very high level. But this Evoke app was created by Evoke. I just want to take a moment for that one. So the Evoke app is actually an app design in a copy of Evoke, and Evoke recreates the Evoke app whenever we make changes and evolve it. So anything that I've been able to do in Evoke, and you've only seen probably 5% of its functionality, you're able to do in your apps. I'd love to have more time to take you into a much more in-depth review of this. There's so much that we haven't had time to look at, such as how we can involve page menus and how even within the templates, we can go in and perform all sorts of information, such as selecting rows, putting in footers, etc., etc. But maybe within the training, we'll have a chance to do that.